Welcome back, everybody, to Who's Your Band? Joining me today, as always, my co-host, Mr. Sean Morton. How are you, Sean?
Happy Valentine's Day, Jeffrey, you sweet boy. You're even wearing red to celebrate today.
Yes, I'm wearing it for you.
Yes, just like my face is red, your shirt is red.
That's what it's about. Love your backdrop. I don't know if anyone has seen this new backdrop yet since you moved into the new place, but I love that Bowie picture.
Isn't it amazing? Awesome. I love it too. This is the temporary setup until the podcast studio is finished sometime next month. After that, you will see my glorious face behind me.
That is going to be a double shot of Sean Morton.
What could you ask for in life?
I don't know if our audience can handle it. But speaking of glorious and speaking, you know what? Our guest today is off. Sean, we've been doing this for over a year now. This is our first returning guest.
And I got to tell you, if there was going to be one person that I wanted to return, it was this gentleman, because this is one of the most fun episodes I had. With, obviously it's hard working with you, but when I have good guests on the show, it makes me dealing with your miserableness a lot easier. And Pat Dixon was one of my favorite guests so far, and I'm glad to have him back for a second time.
Right. So from the New York City Crime Report, we welcome in comedian Pat Dixon. How are you, Pat?
Very good, thanks. I'm honored to be back. I can't believe I'm your first returning guest after all this time. You've really spread the ball around, haven't you?
We're trying to.
We spread the ball around. Yes, that's a good analogy. But today is kind of like a special episode. Besides it being Valentine's Day, we're not going to do best love songs. No, what we're going to talk about really is last week the nominees for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame came out. So let's talk about who's on the ballot for the first time. And then we'll also get into like who is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and should they be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
So there's 14 people on this year's induction list. And I got to tell you, there's one I never heard of. I'm not going to lie. And in my opinion, there's only two guarantees that are going in on this list.
All right, let's start with that. Let's start with your guarantees, because I have a feeling your guarantees and my guarantees may be different. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm very happy to see one of my favorite bands that's nominated for the first time is the Foo Fighters. And I guarantee you they are a lock as a first ballot entry into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I think they're just, some people, worship the ground they walk on. Some people think they're just a great band. I personally think Dave Grohl is the last, the last rock star alive right now until the next generation comes along. And, they've had an amazing career. They've only had one or two dud albums over the last 25 years. And I think he's going to be one of the youngest double inductees once he makes it in too. I think he's only like 49 or so. So I think he's going to be I think he's the youngest, if not Michael Jackson. But I think they definitely deserve to go in on the first ballot. And surprisingly, this is going to shock you, Jeffrey. I think the only other lock to go in is Jay-Z. Yes, I don't agree with it. No, listen, I don't agree with it. But I think because of the clout that he has in the music industry, in the rap world, he really has put out a real great catalog of music. It doesn't help, it doesn't hurt that he's married to a very hot wife. But yeah, I really hate to say it. I mean, I would rather have like 3 or 4 other people on here as my lock, but I think that Jay-Z is definitely going in on the first ballot too.
I got to disagree with you on both of them. Okay. I not that the Foo Fighters aren't worthy of being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I just don't think they're first ballot lock. I mean, what have they done that's been special? I mean, in this climate here, I mean, we're rock fans, so we want them to carry the torch for rock. But I think overall in music, I don't say they're a good band. I don't think they've done anything special. And listen, this is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Jay-Z, I have a big problem with this. He if it was the Music Hall of Fame, if it was the Hip Hop Hall of Fame, I'd say yeah, he absolutely should be in. But in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I'm not really. I think there are other people on this list that deservingly should go in beforehand, and I'll give you a couple. I think one, Devo should be in before the Foo Fighters, just because they were like kind of like the first like pop art type of band. They didn't take themselves too seriously. They are around the same time with Kraftwerk, but they're a little bit more poppy. I also think the Go-Go's have to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I don't know how they're not in at this point. And
I would agree with that.
And they're just being brought up for the first time. I think is a gross oversight that Iron Maiden isn't in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for what they've done for heavy metal music. I think heavy metal music is completely unrepresented in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And then if I'm going to put another guarantee in there right now, I'm probably going to have to go with Todd Rundgren, more as a producer than an artist. Pat, what do you think?
Look, I don't disagree about the Foo Fighters being, having a pretty good shot. I mean, the Kurt Cobain connection there with the Foo Fighters doesn't help.
And they're
it doesn't hurt, rather.
Of Rolling Stone. So I could see, I think if you're going to bet on it, I think Sean is right. But I think, if we're doing what's the right thing here, I mean, they can go in the second, third time. And I think there are more deserving candidates. So guys, I'm sorry.
Well, people are they're afraid of hurting feelings and stuff too. So Jay-Z, is a politically correct sort of a choice. I mean, like who would say no to Jay-Z on anything right now? It seems like the answer is yes everywhere for him. So I mean, the New York Dolls are up. I don't know if it's their first if it's their first nomination or not, but to me, they're the best band on the list. If you're going to have a Hall of Fame, and then they certainly belong in it. I mean, they were huge in influence. If not, I mean, maybe they didn't sell as many records as some of the other people on the list, but to me, they're by far and away the best band on the list. And I'd like to see them, but as far as a lot goes, I mean, who knows? I'm always out of step with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. See, I think the reason the Foo Fighters are definitely going in first is I don't know if you guys have ever seen them live. Number one, there's very few bands that can put out a 3 to 3.5 hour live set, which is what they do every single concert that they put out. They don't bring an opening act out anymore. They just go out there at 8 o'clock and they're out there till 11:30 because their catalog is so deep. And they're doing 30, 35 songs every single night. It really is. And I saw them, I think it was a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I saw them like 5 times over the summer. And that was when he had the throne where he had the broken leg. Even with a broken leg, sitting down, he was rocking out and he had the whole place completely jumping the whole time. I did see the Foo
Fighters just once. If I can mention, I saw them once open for Bob Dylan, and they did like a softer kind of acoustic set. It's still entertaining.
Oh yeah, they're great acoustic
venue and situation.
Absolutely. So, and they just put out a new album.
The only time I saw them live.
They put out a new album Friday. It's called Medicine at Midnight. And Jeff, I think Pat, you would actually like this album too. It is a very, very 70s throwback album. And every time I hear it, I think of like a Thin Lizzy or a Super Tramp, and sometimes even like little Bay City Rollers in there too. But they also throw in some like stuff like the Killers and Motorhead on the album. It's a really, really solid record. Can we just talk about some of the names that should not even be on this list?
Sure.
To start, Mary J. Blige. Can we just not even mention her anymore for the rest of the episode?
I mean, I'm a big fan of Mary J. Blige, but in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I don't get it.
No. Chaka Khan.
Same thing with Mary. I like Chaka Khan too, but for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I don't see it.
And what's a Fela Kuti?
It's an African act. And he passed away, so they have to throw in that. Also, I want to throw in that if you for what Pat said about you got to, or I think one of you guys said about if you got to do the politically correct thing, you got to throw Jay-Z in there. I'd rather put LL Cool J over Jay-Z, because at least Jay-Z did, remember he did that unplugged thing, and he did it with a live rock band. He did kind of at one time fuse a little bit of rock and roll with rap. Jay-Z never did that. I guess what you're gonna do, maybe his collaboration with Linkin Park.
I would go Jay-Z over LL Cool J personally. I think he's done more. LL's kind of been out of the game for 15, 20 years probably since he's been an actor. You know what I mean? Jay-Z at least is still consistently putting out music. Whether if it's not our favorite genre, yeah, I get it. But for the culture that he plays to, he's very, very important. He's considered one of the greatest rappers of all time.
But we're talking the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame,
right? I understand
that's the title of.
But I get that. But the title means nothing, and in theory, the Hall of Fame means nothing too. But it really doesn't mean anything anymore once they started putting pop stars and rappers and even country people. I mean, look, Johnny Cash is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame too, and he's a 95% predominantly country act. Does he belong in there too? No.
Then rename it the Music Hall of Fame. But
well, I disagree with you on Johnny Cash, because Johnny Cash started out in the rock and roll era. At least he was one of the founding dudes of that time. Talking about late 50s, mid 50s, and he pioneered a certain sound. I think that he would belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame just because of his history. I mean, but he might have been more of a country flavor, eventually, but he did have a rock and roll attitude that carried through his entire career. Even the last couple of albums that he did, he was re-recording things like "Hurt" by 9 Inch Nails and a variety of these kind of songs. So, I mean, I think that, even by virtue of those American Recordings albums, he belongs in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I have no problem with Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson all being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but I do have a problem with when you take just blatant hip hop artists that have no connection to rock and roll. I don't think it's rock and roll. I'm not saying that they're not good. I mean, they're good. And if it was called the Music Hall of Fame, I'm fine with it. But when you talk about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I need to see some type of connection to rock and roll.
Yeah,
so that's what, and I think how do you not have the Go-Go's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when they kind of were they're really one of the first, because the Runaways aren't in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame either. Right. But when we talk about inspiring and along with the commercial success as well. I mean, the Go-Go's had a lot more commercial success than the Runaways. I think the Go-Go's, really are deserving to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Who else do you think shouldn't be on this list? You don't think should be?
I don't know. I mean, I would
you say Dionne Warwick,
Kate Bush, and Dionne Warwick, maybe.
If Kate Bush was a baseball player, we'd be talking about
Mackie Sasser.
I was a little bit better than Mackie Sasser. Someone who maybe made one All-Star game appearance, Mike
Pagliarulo.
Mike Pagliarulo would be perfect. Yes, Mike Pagliarulo would be a perfect analogy. No, she's not a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer. This is a little misleading. Carole King, she's already inducted as a performer, and this nomination is as a songwriter.
That's bullshit. If you're in once, you're in once, for Christ's sake.
I think she should be in as a songwriter as well. I mean, she wrote some of the all-time great, pop and rock, not rock and roll, but rock songs.
The problem with the Go-Go's was it's the same thing that happened with Joan Jett, is that people forgot about them. And Joan Jett, when I went to the induction in Brooklyn when Nirvana was inducted into the Hall of Fame, and when she filled in for Kurt Cobain on "Smells Like Teen Spirit," it kind of brought her back into their line of sight, I think. And then the next year she was nominated and inducted. Same thing with the Go-Go's. I think that the reason why they were kind of just forgotten about, and then that documentary came out last year on Showtime, which was very successful, and it was a great documentary. I think they kind of pushed them back into the limelight, and that's kind of the reason why they got nominated this time. But I agree. I think they should absolutely be in. I think it should absolutely be in. And Iron Maiden, I mean, as you know, Jeff, as well. I mean, I'm a huge Iron Maiden fan. I've always been for years. It's been under my skin that bands like them and Judas Priest, and even though I don't like them personally, like Deep Purple, why they're not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is mind blowing.
Makes no sense.
But I think that's another one that people have just been constantly bashing the Hall of Fame for neglecting them. This is a band that plays every country on the globe at some point. I mean, they play Africa, for Christ's sake, and they sell out. These people have no food yet they're buying a friggin' Iron Maiden ticket. You know what I mean? They're a global band who sells out hundreds of thousands of people a show. I don't understand what the whole issue was for them being neglected for so long. But I think that they're kind of just thrown on this nominee list, and I don't think they're going to get it because they only do about 5 or 6 per year. 6, 7 the most, but I don't think that they make it this year, and it sucks because I think they did it with Bon Jovi too. You can't deny Bon Jovi's not the greatest band in the world, but they write catchy tunes and they've sold hundreds of millions of records. And they threw them on.
Eligible for the Rock. They are definitely. I know they're in, and deservingly so. But I think when you break it down to what they mean to the genre of music, and this does qualify as rock and roll. Yeah. Iron Maiden. When you talk about a Mount Rushmore of heavy metal bands, this is a band that's on there.
Oh, absolutely.
So if you're gonna have Metallica in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you got to have Iron Maiden in the Hall of Fame. That's true. And also another group that I think is probably a little overlooked, and I think will eventually or should eventually get in is Rage Against the Machine. I think they were the band of the 90s. They were political, they were rock and roll, they fused genres. I think they were.
The thing about this horse shit Hall of Fame thing is that they usually only put one monster name first. You know, they always have like one monster name going in as like the headline of the class.
Right.
I think the Foo Fighters are that for this class, and I think Rage does it next year because next year is a big one too. I think it's like Dave Matthews is up for next year. I think. Ugh. I know, but people like him. My friends Chris and Christine have seen him like 210 times.
That's lawyer music. It is. It's guys like who wear khakis on a casual Friday and like let's relax with a couple of ultras, and they play Dave Matthews in the background.
I always say that these are the guys in the parking lot that have the flip flops with the bottle opener on the bottom of them. Pat, you ever see those?
No, I haven't seen that. Pat, what do you think?
The question originally was who shouldn't be on the list, and I'm going to say again, Dionne Warwick. I don't get it. Why she's I suppose the wall of sound and all that kind of stuff. But I don't care about her as a rock and roll act at all.
Was she even produced by Phil Spector? I remember she was kind of like a big protege of Burt Bacharach. Remember, he used to write a lot of her music and arrange a lot of her
Bacharach. Stuff. Great rock and roller, Burt Bacharach. Yeah. Yeah, I don't get her being on the list, and I love the Go-Go's as well. I don't know. I mean, the Go-Go's had a string of hits in the '80s that kind of defined the '80s, but as well as any other band did. I would love to see them. And Devo is one of my favorite bands from, especially their early stuff, which was but they never really significantly altered their sound. They were not a big. They didn't have wide acceptance, there at the beginning, and they had a couple of hits, and I like Devo a lot. I think that they were doing something a lot of people didn't quite get. I'd love to see them get some kind of recognition, but Mother's Bow went on to a huge career, playing music for cartoons and stuff like that. So it means like you can't cry too many tears for him.
Early on, man, they were so super experimental. Their version of Satisfaction was like a completely different take on the song, and then they did, I think, kind of change their songwriting a little bit when a song like Whip It became like unbelievably huge in the 80s. What do you think about Tina Turner? She's in with Ike Turner and the Review, but she's now up for the first time as a solo artist.
Oh, I think hands down she belongs in the Hall of Fame. Hands down. I mean, she's had an amazing body of work, even going back to after Ike, up until probably the mid 90s, she's kind of been out of it for a little while, but yeah, I think she absolutely goes in there way before Dionne Warwick, miles before Mary J. Blige and Kate Bush. I think if you put one broad in this class, you put Tina Turner in.
Well, listen, go ahead, Pat. You want to say something?
Yeah. I agree. If there's one female that goes in, it would be Tina Turner. I'm surprised. Now you said she's in there already with Ike, but that stuff I think about Proud Mary, all that kind of. I mean, that was a real. Yeah, they had a sound, and she's just been around. She taught Mick Jagger how to dance. I think. I mean, she's
who had a better solo career, Stevie Nicks or Tina Turner?
Stevie Nicks. Yeah, I go
I mean,
Stevie Nicks.
it's an interesting to argue about. Yeah, I mean, like, because a lot of her solo stuff, Stevie Nicks, was duets. You know, like a duet with Don Henley, Leather and Lace, duet with Tom Petty, Stop Dragging My Heart Around.
Did you ever have a solo hit as big as What's Love Got to Do with It?
Oh yeah, Edge of 17.
Or Simply the Best? Really? Was it?
Oh yeah.
Stand Back.
Talk to me.
Stand Back was a big hit.
Jeff hates Stevie Nicks. I think what happened was when Jeff, I don't know if you know this, Pat, but one of his first jobs out of college, he worked for CBS Records in the A&R department. This is before he was in The Irishman, by the way. And I think that he kind of hit on Stevie Nicks one time, and she kind of bashed him. That's what I think, because he's got some unbridled hatred for Stevie Nicks, and I don't understand why.
I just think she's incredibly overrated. And if we're going to put one female artist in there, I mean, how you guys are smart, okay? Explain to me how Pat Benatar is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame at this point.
There's a lot of people, Jeff, who are just, there's no rhyme or reason for it. Some of them are on this list right now. I mean, you put Iron Maiden before Pat Benatar? I don't. I put Pat Benatar before and I put Iron Maiden in.
I agree with you.
There's no rhyme or reason to it.
I couldn't believe she was eligible last year, I think, for the first time, and I couldn't believe that she didn't get in. I think she has to get in this year. If any one of these women get on before her, it's a joke. It's a travesty. It is already a joke and a travesty, but this just furthers it. Let me read a couple of other guys who are not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Should Peter Frampton be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Peter Frampton had 2 good songs.
Oh, I lost sound.
2 good songs, Peter Frampton. That's it. Show Me the Way and Baby, I Love Your Way. That's it.
Frampton?
Yeah.
Well, Frampton Comes Alive was the biggest selling album for a long time.
Yeah, but look at the people who are buying it. He's my co-host. You know what I mean? They're not smart music people. You know what I mean? I can see Jeff blasting an 8-track of Frampton Comes Alive in his 82 T-top Camaro driving down friggin' Highland Boulevard in Staten Island. Am I far off?
What's more rock and roll than that?
I lost sound for a second.
What's more rock and roll than what you just described? Nothing.
Well, he's also wearing a denim jacket at the same time while having his feathered mullet waving in the wind.
Yeah, it's just making it more and more rock and roll. REO Speedwagon, yes.
It was a great.
Should Jethro Tull be?
Yeah, I don't like Jethro Tull, but yes, they do belong in. They do belong in. I'm not a fan of them in the least bit, but yeah, they do belong in there. And that's the thing. You got to be impartial. You know what I mean? It's not like you have to pick your favorite people. You got to take a step back and see what they've contributed. Yeah, Jethro Tull is a great band. I just have no love for them at all, but I know how much they've contributed to music in the last 45 years as well. So yeah, they belong in there. Plus, Jethro Tull also has a sour taste in my mouth when they beat out Metallica for the Grammy with the Black Album.
That was Black Album. That's not their fault. That's just stupid Grammy voters who are so out of touch with music and what people listen to. So it has nothing to do with Jethro Tull. Yeah, Pat.
Who has a stronger rock and roll flute than Jethro Tull?
Nobody, but
maybe Chicago.
Oh God! Don't get me started. That's fucking band. Please.
They're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I will tell you, when you have a band like Chicago that has 37 members in it, it is very painful to watch the induction ceremony. Because when I went to see Nirvana get inducted, the E Street Band was also inducted by themselves.
Yeah, on their own. Not even with Bruce Springsteen, on their own.
And I'm a huge Bruce fan, and I wanted to fucking kill myself because they took an hour and 15 minutes. You saw the abridged version if you watched it on HBO. If you were there in person, each one took 15 minutes. It was the long.
Yeah, because we want to hear what Gary Tennant has to say.
Everybody was filing out to go get beers and take a piss. Yeah, I swear to God, half the place was empty when they were talking. It was just very, very strange.
Let me give you a couple of other names of guys who are not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Joe Cocker is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Grand Funk Railroad, not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And Bernie Taupin, the lyricist for Elton John, is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I think all three of these artists who I just brought up should all be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Do you like Joe Cocker
how do
just
you,
because of half of his name?
I do. Yeah, yes. I just think it'd be fun, and it'll be funny just to say Joe Cocker, and then they should cut it off at the end. But no, how does Elton John get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but yet Bernie Taupin doesn't?
Because I think it's about the performer first before the songwriter.
They're together. You don't have Elton John. Elton John isn't in. You don't have these songs without Bernie Taupin.
It makes no really sense. About the songs. I mean, I suppose arguably it is, but
I mean, there's a songwriter's Hall of Fame.
I mean, he's just a lyricist as well, right? Isn't he just a lyricist?
Yes,
he's just a lyricist. I mean, there's a songwriters Hall of Fame, which I think is great. I'm sure he's probably in there.
I think he's in it already.
Yeah, I'm sure he is. He has to be. I mean, there's got.
But there is a category for songwriters, Sean, just like there are for record executives. So,
I don't
when
get
it comes,
either. Why do you have a record executive?
The people who've done something influential or turned the record industry around. How about Meatloaf? Why isn't Meatloaf in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Because Meatloaf put out one good album and then one good song on another album, and that's it.
No, Bad Out of Hell.
But when you say one good album, think about one good album.
It's an amazing album.
Almost all these people do. Bad Out of Hell.
True.
I mean, geez. Huge,
it's an amazing album.
Influential. Yeah. I mean,
an amazing album, but after that, he really only had one big song, off the Bat Out of Hell too. I mean, you really can't.
Even without that,
it's a great song.
Even without that, I think one great rock album should be enough to get a band in.
The Sex Pistols. Look at the Sex Pistols. They only had one album and they made it in.
Then if they're in. Then explain to me how Thin Lizzy isn't in.
True, very true. And I'm late to the game with Thin Lizzy. I can't lie. I always knew the boys are back in town. That's all I knew. And then our friend Don Jameson, kind of shoved Thin Lizzy down my throat and said, you have to listen to them. And he gave me like 7 albums to listen to. And I did. And they really are an amazing band. And
Whiskey in a Jar is everyone thinks, it's a great Metallica song. It's a Thin Lizzy song.
Well, it's actually an Irish folk song, but
what was Thin Lizzy? They were an Irish rock band.
Well, good backpedal, Jeffrey. Good backpedal.
They should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame again if you're going to use that criteria.
I don't know. I think
we only took 5 or so per year, So I mean, I think that it takes time to spread because they got to spread out each year. You have to have one of these. It just so happens that there's a whole bunch of great, just regular white guy rock bands, and that it's good. Therefore, it's going to take a lot longer to get all them in.
I think if I had to pick 5 off this list, and I'm only going to say 5. They'll probably do 6. We'll do 6. I think if I'm going to pick 6, I think I go with the Foo Fighters as the main one. I say the Go-Go's, Jay-Z, Iron Maiden, Tina Turner, and the New York Dolls. I think that's a solid class. I think Rage Against the Machine gets the shit end of the stick only because the Foo Fighters are on the list. If the Foo Fighters weren't on the list, I would actually have to put Rage Against the Machine as the main act going into the Hall of Fame this year.
How do you leave Pat Benatar off the list again?
All right, can I ask you what is the deal with Pat Benatar? Now, I know that Stevie Nicks turned you down when you were working at CBS Records, but when you came out of college, you were working at CBS. And did Pat Benatar stick a finger in your butt, Jeff? Is that what it was? I mean, did she? Did you hook up with Pat Benatar? Is that what it is?
Let me ask you, do you like Lizzie Hale and Hailstorm?
I love Lizzie Hale.
Okay, you don't have Lizzie Hale and Hailstorm without Pat Benatar.
I get that, but there's got to be something, Jeffrey.
Who was name a more successful female artist, rock artist than Pat Benatar as a solo artist? I'm not talking about Stevie Nicks shit because Pat Benatar should have been in over Stevie Nicks 100 times over.
Janis Joplin.
She's not. She's kind of like almost like a folk artist. She's not she's rock and roll.
Yeah.
I mean, she's fine. She's fine, but she's. I mean, come on. Who had more hits?
I would argue not more successful. Yeah, not more successful. I don't think.
Yeah, Pat Benatar, man, and changed her sound from the first couple of albums. You know, and again, you talk about an artist who dominated a decade. What female artist was bigger than Pat Benatar in the '80s through the early '90s?
I don't know, Madonna.
Yeah, maybe.
She
There
was,
might be bigger.
she was a pop. Madonna was a
Ultimately.
pop artist, not a rock and roller.
I'll give you Pat Benatar.
What about Cher?
I'll give you Pat Benatar. But I'm going to find out the story.
Stop, Pat. Stop right. Cher.
Oh, I'll say Cher is
Stop
bigger
it.
than was
Get
bigger
outta
than
here.
Pat
Get outta
Benatar
here.
Bigger than Pat Benatar, yeah.
in the 80s.
Not in the 80s.
Yeah, between 86 and like 92, I would say Cher was way bigger than Pat Benatar. Absolutely.
No.
Well, she
no.
came back hard with that. She had a
That's
huge
90.
hit. She was.
That's
I found,
90s.
found someone.
Oh no! I found someone I found someone is
Michael
80.
Bolton song.
Right, but not. But I was thinking, strong enough, and do you believe that those are '90s songs?
No, she had If I Could Turn Back Time, just like Jesse James.
Yeah,
You
those
know.
are good songs. Those are very good.
I think she was bigger. I think she was bigger than Pat Benatar. I got to tell you.
I don't know if she's bigger than Pat Benatar, but she also was more of a crossover because she was on
the
TV
movies,
and
sure.
did movies. But when you look at it, at her body of work and music that she put out, she first of all, she didn't put out as much content as Pat Benatar and as much really good content. You could look at the first about 4 to 5 Pat Benatar albums and say these are all really solid albums, if not great albums, and they all have hits on them. I just don't get how she's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but yet you're going to put Stevie Nicks ahead of her.
I think that, you may have time in your schedule, Jeff, to do a third podcast. And I think it should be a Pat Benatar tribute podcast.
It'll be a Pat
Pat
Benatar
Benatar
tribute.
Yeah, I think she belongs there. Yeah. I mean,
do
she
too.
had great songs.
I do too. I just don't have the complete like utter love and dedication and devotion that Jeff is exuding about this Pat. It's like lust. It's almost lustly.
It's not lustly. It's just like I hate the nondescript criteria that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame puts out there, and they're going to be the taste makers, and they're going to decide who goes in and who doesn't go in, and they're going to put some of these like such utter shit sometimes in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they're going to leave out deserving artists.
If you had to pick your six,
you think about it.
If you had to pick,
I was going to say that when you think about these artists, I always think about an era that they dominated, and I don't mean I mean like shorter than an era, but a moment in time when their video was all you saw, and that "Love Is a Battlefield" video.
Thank you, exactly.
Pat Benatar. That was all you saw during that time. So I mean, it was
and it's a horrible video, but
popular.
Still.
I mean, they put a lot into it. It's a whole story and everything. I still hear when I hear that song. I still hear the little, the dialogue from the video, kind of like going in between some of those parts.
It's so bad. And the bed dancing. She couldn't really dance, but they made her shake her shoulders, and she had no tits.
That was ridiculous.
Yeah, but still, her music was great. And if you're going to talk about dominating an era, and you couldn't get away from their videos. How about Duran Duran, who's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Was there anything bigger than Rio and Hungry Like the Wolf? Off the same album, by the way?
The Reflex.
Yeah, I mean, that was like the follow-up album. I mean, they were huge. So are they a band that deserves to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
I would agree.
They just fluff?
I would
agree. No, that they belong.
Yeah, I mean, there's fluff already. I mean, it's as good as some of the other fluff.
Now, Jeff, here's my question for Duran Duran. Which team were you on? Like, who was the poster that was hanging in your bedroom? Were you
Simon Le Bon?
You were a Simon Le Bon. Yeah, I thought you'd be more of a John Taylor fan, personally.
I did like John Taylor, but I mean, come on, when Simon Le Bon, on the Eiffel Tower singing the James Bond song "View to a Kill."
Ugh,
come on, he was so cool.
It's garbage.
Great hair.
I'm gonna make.
All I was having sex with at the time was into Simon.
Simon Le Bon was the GOAT, man. He was great. And go back to what Pat said before about all these like white guy bands that are going to just have to wait their turn to get in. If that's also going to be a criteria, Styx isn't going to get in until about 2070.
Yeah, well, they only have like 7 fans that are still alive left, so I think once they all kick off, then they'll probably make it in.
Yeah, but
it'll be when Dennis DeYoung is on his deathbed or something.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not.
They've already lost one of the Panazzo brothers.
I'm not a Styx fan.
That's great that Pat knows that reference. He cited a Panazzo brother reference. You don't get that on a lot of shows, by the way.
No, Pat is entirely too smart for this fucking dumb podcast. Is what I'm telling you.
Here's how smart I am. I actually saw Styx. I saw Styx on the Mr. Roboto tour.
Oh.
Which I know is like everybody craps on it, but when you're 13 years old, they were successful in bringing in a lot of new fans that way.
I'll do you one better than that, Pat.
Although I know their fans hated it.
I was at that tour and I was brought up on stage and wore the Mr. Roboto head.
Hey, here's a secret. I got a secret. You both suck for going to that concert. There's my 2 cents.
Do you know what I have in my queue right now, Sean?
What?
I still have, from concerts that were canceled. Terry and I were supposed to go see Styx over at the Beacon, and that was one of our backstage meet and greet type of things that we had set up. Still not canceled, just postponed.
So listen, Jeffrey, if you had to pick your 6 off of this list, who does your 6? What does your 6 look like?
I would go Devo.
Well, who's your main one? Like, who's your headlining act?
Why does it have to be a headlining act?
Well, because every year has that one monster act. So out of that list, who do you think is the monster act that goes in as the last person?
I hate that as a criteria, man. I really do. But if I'm going to do that, I'm going to go Iron Maiden or the Go-Go's. I would go Devo, Go-Go's, Iron Maiden. I would probably go Todd Rundgren. I'd go Pat Benatar.
She's not on the list, Jeffrey.
She is. She's still eligible.
She's not on the nominees.
That's the first time nominees.
No, Jeffrey.
She's still eligible. She could still get in. But if we're only going to go with these first timers, I'm going Devo, Go-Go's, Iron Maiden. I would go Todd Rundgren. And honestly, I don't think anyone else deserves to be a first-time ballot. You got to go 2 who are still eligible. And I would go again. I still go Pat Benatar and maybe. Oh my
God! If I took a shot for every time you said Pat Benatar in this episode, I'd be dead in the hospital from alcohol poisoning.
And then here's another guy that should be on the list before a lot of these other guys. How about Sting? The Police are in, but why isn't Sting in as a solo artist?
Because he's too busy fucking 18 hours a day. That's why.
It's good for him that he's fucking 18 hours a day, but he should still be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. What's the matter, Pat? What's the matter?
I'm not a fan of Sting. His solo stuff. I mean, the Police were great. The solo stuff, I'm not a fan at all. I don't even remember what the what did he do?
Yeah, like he had If I Ever Lose My Faith in You, Fields of Gold,
Desert Rose.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't tend to think he belongs in there either. I know. I think the Police absolutely, but nah, I don't go with that either. I got to agree with my friend Pat over here.
Although, I mean, I don't know what their criteria are, but if I were to give you mine off of the list, I can give you 6 easy. I would say Devo, the Go-Go's, Iron Maiden, and New York Dolls, and Tina Turner. I think that's 5.
It's 5. I mean,
what about Todd Rundgren?
Yeah. I mean, I don't see any reason why not. I've owned very little of what Todd Rundgren has done, but he's with 10cc, right? That was his.
No, we put in 10cc. Todd Rundgren, he was a solo artist. He had the song I Saw the Light. Hello, It's Me. Those are probably 2 of his better known songs. He is the producer. If Jim Steinman wrote Bat Out of Hell. You don't get that sound without Todd Rundgren. Him and his band were the backing band in that. He had a band called Utopia. That was a really good prog rock.
Did you say
band.
Utopia?
Utopia. I didn't say Jutopia.
I thought you said Utopia. I'm like,
I say
you are racist.
Like
Utopia. Yes.
I heard
that totally wrong.
Yeah. No, he had the band Utopia.
I never knew that. I think you're both way off with the Foo Fighters. I really do. And I'm not just saying that because I have a personal connection with the Foo Fighters. I really do. I think they're the biggest rock band in the last 25 years by far.
Why are they so great? Like why the Foo Fighters over bands like Foreigner, Boston, Bad Company?
Okay, because they're all shitty bands, and the Foo Fighters
They're not shitty. They're not shitty bands.
Well, look,
Bad Company is a shitty band.
Here's how I think.
Okay.
Go ahead, Pat. Go ahead.
I was going to say, this is my terrible memory, but the Foo Fighters guy who I do like, who is he?
Dave Grohl,
the drummer for Nirvana. Dave Grohl would probably say, yeah, why should we be in there before Foreigner? Why should we be in there before, ZZ Top or whatever? You know what I mean?
ZZ
I
Top's
think he would
in there
agree
already.
with you. Right, but
Yeah,
I think he'd agree with
he
you
is
on
that
the few
kind of
bands
guy.
he just threw out there. Quiet Riot or whatever. He's humble and he knows that.
To be.
Why not?
I just think that over the last 25 years there hasn't been a lot of tremendous great new rock and roll, and they have been the biggest rock and roll band. If you put on any rock station for an hour, any station across the country, you're going to hear a Foo Fighters song. No matter what time of the day it is, you're always going to hear that. They put out one of the best rock songs ever long, maybe of all time. It really it holds it right up there as a top 10 all-time rock song.
Are you smoking right now? Are you high?
No, absolutely not.
Everlong is a top 10 rock song of all time.
Top 10 rock song of all time, without question.
You're nuts.
Nope, without question. And I'm telling you that the difference.
It wouldn't even be a top 10 Zeppelin song. It wouldn't even be a top 10 Sabbath song. Everlong wouldn't be a top 10 Iron Maiden song.
What are you what are you even talking about?
You're saying Everlong is a top 10 song of all time?
A top 10 rock and roll, like a hard rock song, yeah.
No, it's not.
There. Sure it is.
It's
Absolutely.
a good song. It's not a top 10. It's better than Stairway to Heaven. It's better than Freebird. It's better than Sweet Home Alabama.
I said it's a top 10. I didn't.
What does that mean? Then what does that mean?
I'm saying, like, if you took Stairway to Heaven, you take your Freebird, you take your, Paranoid, Dream On, Smells Like Teen Spirit, Sweet Child of Mine, Everlong by the Foo Fighters. I think it belongs in there. I'm not saying it's.
I don't even know if it's top. I don't even know if it's top 100.
Jeff, here's the problem with me and you. The problem is you have your version, and I have the truth, and that's the biggest issue that we have in this podcast. But no, listen, I'm standing firm with my thing that the Foo Fighters are the headline of this class by far. And
what makes them so great?
Because they've put out 13. They put out 13 albums in the past 25 years, which, number one, is a hard thing to do. 2 of them were shit. And listen, 2 out of 13 being shit, it's not a bad ratio. Okay. And like I said, he's not only
Maiden never put out a bad album, by the way.
Book of Souls ain't that great. Let's but here's the thing.
What about Big Me?
What's that?
Big Me. That's a great song.
It's a great song. But the thing about them is they evolved. They evolved from the first album to the second to the third. They've always evolved. And he's done more than just music. Like, he's a big proponent of the whole music genre. You know what I mean? Like, he did the Sound City documentary. He did the Sonic Highway. The Sonic Highways alone. I don't know if you know the story behind that, Pat. They did an album called Sonic Highways. And what they did was they took 8 major musical cities. They took, like, New York, LA, New Orleans, Chicago, Austin, Texas, a couple other cities. and they did like an 8-part documentary series on it, and they had all the music written for 8 songs, and they purposely didn't write lyrics for them. So they went out and they interviewed people from all these major cities, and he actually made the lyrics from the songs out of all the clips from the interviews of people that he interviewed. It was an 8-part series on HBO. It was absolutely amazing. I've watched every one at least a dozen times. And, he did the sound.
When I think of everything that Dave Grohl has said in interviews and whatnot, Dave Grohl, he's generally saying stuff that is like pro start a band, pro get out there, and things that are encouraging to people who might have been in a similar position. When I think about that, I think you're winning me over. I think that they would belong first ballot because they probably have done more for rock than anybody lately. Considering rock is practically
that's
dead,
it. That's it. You're right.
Yeah. So I'd put him in that category. Sure.
They carry the torch for rock.
Oh, yeah.
I agree with that. And that's why I'm not saying that they suck. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that they suck. I'm not saying that they don't deserve to be in, but I just think a band like Grand Funk Railroad, their music has stood this test of time. They should be in. I think, I don't know. Why is it like Kansas is a band that's not in? That is a great rock band. What
about Weezer?
I think Weezer first. I think Weezer.
I don't think they're eligible yet. They're not eligible yet.
No, they actually. Okay. No, they should be eligible. They came out in the Blue album came out in '95, so they should have been eligible this year. That was my first year of college, so yeah, that should have been.
They should. I thought they came out a little bit later than that.
I think the Blue album was '95.
What about Ted Nugent? Why isn't he in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
The guns, political things.
That's no
politically unpopular
because he's not woke enough. Okay, because not woke. You got to be woke to get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
The Weezer album came out in 1994, May of 1994. So I was still in high school when that album came out. That's very strange. They should definitely be on there. Just the first 2 albums alone. The Blue album and Pinkerton are 2 of the best albums of that time frame.
In my opinion, I think Pinkerton is the best Weezer album. And I think when you talk about 90s bands, they're different than Rage Against the Machine. I think Rage was an angry, political, great band and my favorite band of the 90s. But when you talk about like pop rock bands, Weezer is my favorite band of the 90s when it comes to that style of music.
Did you hear their last album? They put out the Teal album, which was all cover songs.
Yeah, it was great.
They did a couple songs from that band that you love so much, Toto.
Yeah, everyone knows that. They did Africa.
And they did Rosanna, too.
Okay. Yeah, he also did Take On Me, which was very good, too.
Very good. Yeah, not bad.
Yeah. How about Boston?
One good album.
That doesn't make any sense to me. They belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for sure. That album was, it wasn't just big, it was enormous. It was again, defined an era, it's a More Than a Feeling, and the other couple of big hits on that.
More than just one of those records. Rock and roll band. Oh my God, you're right.
And can we also just say probably the greatest suicide of all time? By the way, Brad Delp.
I hate that story.
But come on, let's just think of it this way, though. How many guys have just taken a bunch of pills or done some smack and gone into a bathtub and died? This guy sealed up his goddamn apartment with tape and brought his grill inside and turned it on. That's dedication. Like, look,
that's rock and roll.
Yeah, that's rock and roll. You take some pills, you might wake up. You know what I mean? You might wake up. You're hermetically sealing your apartment and you're opening the propane tank on your grill on the inside of your friggin' apartment. It's got kudos.
Now,
you got kudos.
Now, no one thinks that Fela Kuti should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
It sounds like a foot disease.
No clue.
Yeah, I have no idea who that is.
Yeah,
Fela Kuti.
Yeah, you know that woke John Weiner, the editor of Rolling Stone, is going to push to put this fucking band or solo performer in there, like over Pat Benatar.
Yeah, I think he played the thing that sounds like on the phone on Paul Simon's Graceland album or something.
Yeah, he
Really?
played the washboard. Yeah, that's what I think he did.
Yeah.
Like no one knows. Yeah, no one knows who Fela Kuti is, and it's just you know what? Again, it's what pisses me off about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because they're gonna force it down your throat. It's not. It's not deserving. You know. How about the B-52s? Should the B-52s be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
I wouldn't discard them. I mean, they've been a huge band for the last 40 years. I would put them in before Fela Kuti or Shaky Booty, whoever his name is.
I put Culture Club in before Fela Kuti.
All right, let's not go crazy, Jeffrey.
Listen, big band. You had about 3-4, big albums. How about Squeeze?
Maybe.
I like Squeeze. I don't know if they're rock and roll. I mean, but that doesn't just stop anybody.
What would you say they are?
They're more of like a popish rock band, I would think. But I'm going to see them this year on my birthday, Jeffrey. They're opening up for Hall & Oates. So I'll let you know in August. Squeeze is a good band.
Where are they playing? PNC?
Hall & Oates must be in.
PNC. I don't know if Hall & Oates is in. That's a good question.
Hall & Oates are in.
Are they?
Yes.
Kiss? Is Kiss in there?
Kiss went in a couple of years ago. Yes, they're in. They had the famous, the four of them had to be dicks, especially Gene and Paul, and not perform.
That's, you know what? I'm an asshole because I was at the Hall of Fame in 2014 when Kiss and Nirvana went in, and Hall & Oates was inducted the same year.
Yeah, you see, you weren't paying attention. You probably were out getting beers,
No, you know why, Jeffrey? Because I got the tickets for $16 on StubHub, and I was literally at the second to last row from the top from the Barclays Center, and I was terrified of falling over, so I sat in my seat the whole time while everybody was standing, and I probably missed half the show by not being able to see it.
That's a class right there. That's an inductees. Right? Those are Hall & Oates, Kiss, and Nirvana
all in one year, right?
Good year.
That is like, who's the headliner on that one?
It was Nirvana.
Really, over Kiss?
Yeah. It was Nirvana. Well, because Kiss didn't perform too. You got to remember, Nirvana got back together to perform, and they had all the extra guest singers to fill in for him.
They're such dicks. They really should have performed that night. They, for
they're
15
assholes.
minutes.
They're just.
There's no excuse for it. I used to work the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductions in the 90s. It used to be in the ballroom at the Waldorf Astoria, and I mean those were great nights. They were wild. That was at the one time I was with Jimmy Page. He gave me his guitar, and another year George Benson gave me his guitar. It was
like
great.
I mean, just to hold.
I was gonna keep it, and then their security came over and said, you really can't keep this guitar.
Hey Pat, just so you know, that year, the 2014, it was Nirvana, Kiss, Peter Gabriel, Hall & Oates, Cat Stevens, and Linda Ronstadt.
That's a hell of a
that's all names. That's names.
A monster class. Obviously, Linda Ronstadt didn't perform because she was sick at that time, but I got to see Cat Stevens perform, which was kind of great. I don't know.
I like Cat Stevens, man. He's hilarious. Isn't he more of a comic, though?
He's not a comic.
Cat Stevens?
He's not a comic.
Yeah. Young black comic, Cat Stevens.
I think on that note, man.
Yeah, on that note,
we're going to wrap this up and go enjoy a little bit of Valentine's Day. Pat Dixon, where could people find you? How could people follow the Pat Dixon?
If people are into Compound Media, that's the best way. Watch Crime Report there. But new episodes of New York City Crime Report coming on audio all the time on iTunes, wherever you get podcasts. New York City Crime Report is a funny podcast about true crime people can enjoy. It's crime news you can laugh at. I think that's the best way. But since this is a rock and roll show, I want to mention Too Woke to F. That's the number 2 and the word woke, and the number 2 again, and F, too woke to F. And it's sort of a political satire podcast set to music, for the most part, a lot of music in it and stuff. And I get a real kick out of it. That's something I wanted to mention, so people can find that wherever they get podcasts as well. Appreciate the chance to say all that, Jeff.
Listen, we appreciate you being on the show with us and being our first return guest, man. It was a pleasure having you back on.
Absolutely.
And I would love to talk about the Rolling Stones sometime when Vanessa Hollingshead isn't on to refute everything that I say.
Yeah. Listen,
she's a Beatles fan.
My dear friend, one of my dearest friends in comedy, my comedy big sister, but Jesus Christ, Captain ADD. She really is. But yeah, we will definitely do a full Rolling Stones hour with you one time, Mr. Dixon.
Yes.
Anything, man. It's fun to be here with you guys. Appreciate it.
It's our pleasure.
Later, Jeff.
Sean, take us out.
Thank you once again for watching, listening to Who's Your Band. Please hit subscribe on our YouTube channel. Let's build those numbers back up. Next week, we have an amazing guest. I'm not going to tell you who it is. You guys stay tuned and find out. So for Jeffrey Paul and myself and our special guest, Pat Dixon, thank you for checking out Who's Your Band, and we will see you next week.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Bye.